This video is supported by Brilliant. There once was an old farmer who had been working his field for many years. And then one day his horse bolted away, and his neighbors heard about it, and they came over to tell him how sorry they were. What awful luck, they said sympathetically. To which the farmer replied, "We'll see." The next morning, to everyone's surprise, the horse returned home, only it brought 3 horses with it. And everybody celebrated, saying, "What amazing luck, you're richer than ever before." To which the farmer replied, "We'll see." A day later, the farmer's son tried to mount one of the wild horses, and it bucked him off and broke his leg. Again, the neighbors gathered around to show sympathy for this horrible event. To which the farmer replied, "We'll see." The next day, the village was visited by military men who were looking for young men to conscript into the army. And they looked at the farmer's son with a broken leg and said, "We can't use him," and kept going. Again, the neighbors came around and said, "What wonderful news, your son won't be sent off to war." To which the farmer replied, "We'll see." This is a famous Taoist parable that kind of illustrates how life is sometimes just going to do what life does, and you can't really control whether good things turn into bad things or vice versa. And I've always kind of identified with this, honestly. That's not to say that I'm more zen than other people. I just have a really bad habit of not being able to celebrate when good things happen, because immediately that part of my brain, the anxiety muscle, flexes and starts thinking about all the ways that this can go wrong. I have a Debbie Downer in my brain. It's fun. But really, the older I get, the more I see this play out. You know, terrible tragedies and scandals spurring positive change, both personally and in society as a whole. And the opposite. So many things in my life that start out great and wonderful that then get twisted and go down dark paths that lead to terrible outcomes. The truth is, the world is a chaotic and messy place, and you just never really know which direction things are going to go. So, in honor of me getting a little bit older and the Debbie Downer in my head getting a little bit louder, here's 5 great ideas that went horribly wrong. If there's one thing we really love to do as a species, it's predict the future. And if there's one thing we're really terrible at as a species, it's predicting the future. I mean, when you think about it, every single decision that we make in our lives is a prediction on the future. It's betting that this particular action is going to turn out better than all the other potential actions we might take. On a personal level, sometimes those decisions turn out great. And sometimes you wake up at 4 in the morning, stuck in a park slide, naked and covered in jam. I made a bad decision, okay? But on a societal level, there's just so many variables at play and so many different individual decisions in the works and powers that be that have their hands in everything. It's almost impossible to predict the outcomes, especially in things like monetary systems and public policy. It's all just soothsaying. This isn't a call for apathy. You know, we have to try. And most of the time, good intentions wind up with good outcomes. But you know what they say about the road to hell? It's paved with stories like these. Story number 1, thalidomide. Morning sickness is a normal part of pregnancy. In fact, 50% of women experience it. And it's caused by hormonal changes in the first trimester that usually is associated with a lot of nausea and vomiting. So much vomiting. This has just been a part of life and pregnancy for as long as we've been living and getting pregnant. And you know, there are always some old folk remedies that would sort of help alleviate the problems, but in 1957, a new wonder drug hit the market that did way better than any old wives' tale ever could. It was called Thalidomide. It came out of West Germany, and it was originally touted as a cure for anxiety and upset stomach, even insomnia, but more than anything, for the first time, it made pregnancy not awful. This was like the first trimester equivalent of an epidural. For the first time ever, women could just enjoy the process of bringing life into the world instead of, barfing in their soup. So it was prescribed like candy. Women jumped all over it. It was the pregnancy wonder drug. But what they should have been wondering was what this effect would have on the fetus. Because right away, those effects began to show. Within a couple of years, 7,000 German babies were born with twisted, malformed, or missing arms and legs. Others suffered with underdeveloped body parts and organs. It took a while to make the connection with thalidomide, but once it was made, they banned its use during pregnancy, but not before 100,000 babies were born worldwide with deformities from the drug, some as late as 1970. And really, those are the lucky ones. It's thought that thalidomide use may have led to as many miscarriages as deformities. And they actually didn't discover the actual reason that thalidomide did this until 2018. It turns out the drug interferes with the transcription protein in the fetus that turns off a gene that's crucial to limb development. Luckily, other safer drugs and treatments have been developed since then for pregnant women, and today thalidomide is restricted only to cancer patients. Story number 2, Kudzu. In 1935, the United States and much of the world really was struggling through a Great Depression, but here in the United States anyway, it was also paired with an ecological disaster known as the Dust Bowl. Giant dust storms across the prairie states in the South choked off entire farms, killed livestock, and made farming impossible. Now, this was partly due to a severe drought, but the main culprit was just topsoil erosion from overtilling the fields. So facing food shortages and bankruptcies amongst farmers, the government set up the Soil Conservation Service, and one of the first things that they did to try to turn things around was they instituted farm subsidies that would allow farmers to not have to plant in all the fields all the time, let some fields rest in between years. Some of that is still in place to this day. They also did something else that's still around to this day. They planted kudzu. Kudzu is a hardy Japanese vine that grows quickly, roots deeply, and has broad, thick leaves. It was first brought to the United States in 1876 for the World's Fair in Philadelphia. It didn't really have a purpose other than maybe to feed livestock, but most farmers weren't really interested in it at the time. But the idea is that if we could plant kudzu, especially along fence posts and roads and whatnot, then it would not only firm up the ground, but it would create a nice little windbreak to keep the wind from sweeping away the topsoil. Not the worst idea, and it might have helped a little bit, but once the Dust Bowl ended, the kudzu did not end. In fact, it spread and kind of took over everything. There's a reason why kudzu is often called the plant that ate the South. It especially flourished in the sun and the rain of the southeastern United States that would just completely overtake entire forests and choke them out of resources and sunlight. Forests that were habitats for wildlife, effectively killing off entire ecosystems. Plus, those dead trees can become uprooted and fall, which becomes a danger for cars and pedestrians. They also grow up power lines and weigh down the power lines to the point of snapping them. In fact, power companies spend up to $1.5 million a year just trying to keep kudzu off of their utility poles. By 1970, the US government considered kudzu to be an invasive weed, and they started funding efforts to keep it under control, and the invasive species group named kudzu one of the top 100 worst invasive species in the whole world. Now, ironically, one thing that might actually be able to bring kudzu under control is another invasive species, the kudzu bug. It's a Japanese bug, and it's not known exactly how it first got here. Most suspect it snuck on board an airplane because it was first seen in a garden near Atlanta's Hartsfield-Johnson Airport in 2009. But its arrival was bad news for kudzu. Kudzu bug infestations kill the vine because they tap into the main vein in the leaf, which kills the leaves and eventually the whole plant. And in the native habitats, the kudzu bug kind of keeps the plant in check. That's one of the reasons why it grew so easily here. And it's starting to make a difference. According to one study, a particular location in this study showed a 1/3 reduction in kudzu over the last 2 years. So yay, invasive species! I'm sure nothing bad will come from them. Story number 3, MTBE. Auto pollution has always been a problem, especially in cities, but oftentimes the efforts that we take to try to curb that just make things worse. One of the biggest missteps we've taken in that direction is MTBE, or methyl tertiary butyl ethyl. Nailed it. It's a chemical compound created by the reaction of isobutylene and methanol, and it's used as a fuel additive for automobiles. And according to the US Environmental Protection Agency, quote, "At room temperature, it's a volatile, flammable, and colorless liquid that dissolves rather easily in water." So the deal is, in the early days of the automobile, engine knock was a problem, and engineers were looking at fuel additives that would help with that. And in 1921, engineers at General Motors came up with the great idea of adding lead. The MTBE came later. They added lead first. This is a bit of a twofer. They picked lead because of the low production costs, but this of course had some massive drawbacks. Drawbacks like low IQ in children, learning disabilities, nerve damage, and behavioral problems. And it impacted adults as well, causing cardiovascular disease and hypertension. And at its height, 200,000 tons of lead were put into gasoline and burned for us to breathe for 50 years. From 1921 till it started getting phased out in 1970, we were just huffing this stuff. So if you ever look around at the world and you feel like it's full of idiots, I mean, it's probably not all lead's fault, but for the purpose of this video, we can say it is. So lead was phased out in the 1970s here in the US anyway, but pollution from cars was still a problem. And this is where MTBE comes in, because it burns more cleanly and reduces air toxins after combustion. And because it was easy to transport and blend into the gasoline, it was used in 87% of gasoline. But it was that solubility in water that made it a problem. Because when it spilled or it leaked, it quickly got into the groundwater, and it could stay there for months and even years. And this happened so much that in 1998, the US Geological Survey found that it was present in 20% of our groundwater. That's 20% of our drinking water was laced with MTBE. And for humans, high levels of MTBE exposure can lead to dizziness, nausea, headaches, and nervous system problems. And in laboratory animals, they exhibited kidney and liver failure. So as of right now, half of the states in the United States have a partial or full ban on MTBE, but we do still continue to export it. I'm sure someday we'll find a way to make burning fossil fuels totally clean. Story number 4, cane toads. A whole video series could be done on invasive species that were intentionally brought into an area to try to fix a problem that then became worse. I just talked about kudzu a second ago. I could also talk about mongoose in Hawaii. They brought them in to keep rat infestations down in the cane fields, the sugar cane fields there in Hawaii, but it turns out that Hawaii has a lot of birds that lay their eggs on the ground, and eggs run much slower than rats, so the mongoose ate all the eggs and wiped out several bird species. In the fields of Australia, the problem wasn't rats, it was cane beetles, so they came up with a similar idea, and they introduced the cane toad in 1935. This was a bit before you had pesticides to fix that kind of problem, so you had a cane field with cane problems with cane beetles, get some cane toads. 3,000 cane toads were released into the sugarcane fields of North Queensland in Australia, and right away they immediately did a fantastic job of completely ignoring the cane beetles and eating all the food for the livestock, because cane toads eat everything. They also did a fantastic job of, they spread like crazy. Female cane toads can lay 30,000 eggs at a time. Today, there's over 2 billion cane toads in Australia. And growing! And this is partly because they have no natural predators in Australia, because it turns out the cane toad is highly venomous. They originated from Central and South America all the way up to southern Texas, and in those areas there were predators that had evolved over the years to be able to handle the cane toads. Those did not exist in Australia. Australia was a little isolated. So not only were they multiplying 30,000 at a time and starving out livestock by eating all their food, and also eating all the prey that other predators ate and starving them out, they were also killing the predators of them because the predators were trying to eat them and dying because of the venom. And this included pets. Cane toads are still a problem in Australia to this day, and now they're kind of becoming a problem in Florida. After an especially warm winter, the toads became so prevalent they were actually clogging people's pool filters, and residents said you couldn't walk anywhere without stepping on one. They've been in Florida for years, sometimes called bufo toads there, but there are concerns that the population might be reaching a tipping point where Florida might start seeing the same issue as Australia. Cane toads, Australia for plague. And story number 5, asbestos. Asbestos actually goes back a really long way. It was used as far back as 4000 BC for candle wicks. And the ancient Greeks and the ancient Egyptians used to wrap bodies in asbestos when they put them on funeral pyres. Because its fire-resistant clay pots in Europe were coated with it, and Charlemagne used to make table napkins out of it. Because apparently table napkins catching fire at parties was a thing back then. They used a lot of candles, didn't they? So it sounds like a pretty remarkable material, something you can get a lot of use out of, right? Yay, asbestos! Except wrong! No! Asbestos is horrible. It can kill you. It can totally kill you to death. Seriously. According to asbestos.com, asbestos is a group of 6 naturally occurring fibrous minerals composed of thin, needle-like fibers. Exposure to it has been shown to cause several types of cancers and diseases such as mesothelioma and asbestosis. And yeah, it can strengthen and fireproof material, but it's banned in most countries. It's not fully banned in the United States, believe it or not, but it is highly regulated. But it used to be used like everywhere. From the 1930s to 1970s, it was considered this miracle mineral, and it could be found in over 3,000 products. You know all those lawyer commercials where they're like, do you know someone with mesothelioma? That's from asbestos. From 1940 to 1979, over 27 million workers were exposed to asbestos from using it in construction materials and whatnot. It did finally start to get phased out in the 1970s though. In 2002, the last US asbestos mine was closed, and in 2005, it was banned completely in Europe. But the EPA here in the United States kind of put a final nail in the coffin of asbestos in April of 2019 by saying in its final rule that it's allowed to rigorously review an expansive list of asbestos products that are no longer on the market before they can be sold again in the United States. And also under this rule, the agency is not allowing any new uses of asbestos, and uses of asbestos covered under the partial 1998 ban will also be banned. But still, it's not entirely banned. Now, in all of these examples, the original idea wasn't dumb. It might have been kind of smart even, but they all included some variables that led it down some paths that nobody could have seen coming. I could easily do a video on terrible things that led to positive outcomes, like World War I, for example, was horrible, obviously, but it did kind of lead to women getting the vote. Because during the war, many women left their homes to work in the war factories, and this led to society kind of, for the first time, seeing them as, people. The fact of the matter is, and I've seen this more and more as I've gotten older, you just never really know what the events of the day are going to lead to, both good and bad, down the road. In 1969, mathematician and meteorologist Edward Lorenz posed the question during the 139th meeting of the American Association for the Advancement of Science: does the flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil set off a tornado in Texas? People often define the butterfly effect as minute occurrences that cause big things later on, but that's not really what Lorenz had in mind at the beginning. He said this question, quote, was to illuminate the idea that some complex dynamical systems exhibit unpredictable behaviors, that small variances in the initial conditions could have profound and widely divergent effects on the system's outcomes. Outcomes, basically, are unpredictable, and this became known as chaos theory. Sir Isaac Newton suggested that nature is a probabilistic mechanical system that runs like a clock. Lorenz challenged this. He also disagreed with the physicist and astronomer Pierre-Simon Laplace, who believed that unpredictability doesn't have a place in the universe. Lorenz just believed that nature's interdependent cause and effect relationship was just too complex to resolve. Life isn't a binary experience. It's chaotic and messy. It can be serendipitous or misfortunate. It can be terrifying and exciting, and it makes it all worth living. And as for where things go from here, we'll see. You know, it just goes to show that life is all about probability. And so it might not be a bad idea to learn a little bit about that. So if that's something you're interested in doing, you might want to check out the Probability Fundamentals class on Brilliant. This course will help you think critically about probabilistic scenarios through 22 interactive quizzes that will explain concepts like expected value, linearity of expectations, rule of product and rule of sum, symmetry, and even give you a leg up on probabilistic games. In other words, it might make you a better gambler. So there's that. This, of course, is just one of dozens of classes on Brilliant where you can learn everything from quantum mechanics to computational biology, or just bone up on algebra, logic, and general scientific fundamentals. You can go as basic or advanced as you want, and you can do it through solving problems, which trains your brain to think like a scientist and gives you problem-solving skills that you can apply to everything in your life. Plus, there are daily challenges, little problems to flex your brain every day to keep those brain muscles strong. They can be downloaded on your phone so you can take it with you on the go, or just do it right from your browser. So if you want to feel maybe a little bit smarter 30 days from now than you do right now, you might want to give Brilliant a try. They're giving the first 200 people that sign up at brilliant.org/answerswithjoe 20% off your subscription for life. And they do have free weekly quizzes and puzzles you can go check out just to get a little taste of it. And if you like it, you can sign up from there. But either way, it's brilliant.org/answerswithjoe. Link is down in the description. Big thanks to Brilliant for supporting this video, and a huge shout out to the Answer Files that are supporting this channel on Patreon and helping me grow a team, forming an awesome community. There's some new people that I need to murder their names real quick. We've got Bastian, Matt Neuendorfer, Mark Burgess, Justina Klemenko, Matt Connolly, Charles Taylor, Martin Cohen, Bob Milo, Chilled Pants, Joel Rogers, James Kearney, Melissa McPherson, The Passenger, very mysterious, Mark Bingham, Steve Maddox, and Sarah Day. Thank you guys so much. If you would like to join them, get early access to videos, access to me, and just join a cool group of people, you can go to patreon.com/answerswithjoe. As always, t-shirts available in the store at answerswithjoe.com/store. I don't really know what this has to do with the subject, but I thought, what the hell? There's all kinds of cool nerdy t-shirts you can go check out. They're a lot of fun. There's mugs, there's posters, there's hoodies, caps, I think. Just go get some cool stuff. It supports the channel and you'll like it. answerswithjoe.com/store. Please do like and share this video if you liked it, and if this is your first time here, maybe check out this video, because according to all the other stuff you've been watching, Google's been watching you and they think that you'll like that one, or any of the other videos that are down the side that might have my face on it. And if you do like them and you want to see more, I invite you to subscribe. I come back with videos every Monday. All right, that's it for now. You guys go out there, have an eye-opening rest of the week, and I'll see you next Monday. Love you guys. Take care.